Welcome, one and all, to the SpareTalk News Network. Your host, Rod Weaver, will be up momentarily as he gets ready for his one-on-one interactive podcast to kick things off. So, sit back and enjoy. And now, on with the show.
Welcome back to the show, everyone, and a huge welcome back to our resident bowling historian, Rod. It's been a minute, hasn't it?
It has, Colleen. Great to be here. Always a pleasure. And what a topic we've got brewing today, right? Something near and dear to my heart, the two-handed delivery.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that these days you see it everywhere, especially in 10-pin, and a lot of people think it's this super modern invention. But from what I understand, you've got some stories that might just challenge that perception, particularly from the duckpin world.
Oh, you bet I do. It's funny, all these young bucks coming up whipping the ball with two hands, and everyone's like, wow, revolutionary. And it is in its own way for the sheer power they generate. But you know, back in the day, especially in duckpins, the two-handed approach wasn't just a thing. It was almost a necessity for some, and definitely a unique path to excellence for others. I'm talking way back 80s, 90s.
The 80s and 90s, that's definitely pre-Jason Belmonte for most people's frame of reference. Tell us about it. Who are we talking about?
All right, so let's rewind. One name that always jumps out when I think of early two-handers in duckpin is Eddie Wirt. Now, Eddie was something else. He carried a pro-level duckpin average, we're talking in the 140s, which is just insane for duckpins. And his style, utterly unique. He'd practically lay the ball down right on the foul line with both hands. It wasn't about generating a huge hook or massive speed. It was pure accuracy and touch. A very controlled, almost gentle delivery, but incredibly effective.
Wow, laying it right on the foul line? That's a mental image right there. So not the big sweeping power shot we associate with two-handers today, but more about precision?
Exactly. In duckpins, precision is king. Every pin matters, and those little guys are notoriously tough to knock down. Eddie's style was all about minimizing variables, getting the ball on its intended path from the first possible inch. He truly mastered it, but he wasn't the only one. Fast forward a bit, and I remember a couple of younger guys from the Men's Maryland Traveling League who were also hitting those 140s averages with a two-handed delivery.
Oh, tell me more about them. What were their approaches like?
Well, you had James Taylor and Chris Harwood. Both were exceptional talents. Chris Harwood, man, he was a phenomenal spare shooter. Truly one of the best I've ever seen, regardless of style. And get this, he even pitched a six-bagger at a Pro Tour event at Longmeadow Bowl around 2009. A six-bagger in duckpins is like hitting the lottery. His two-handed delivery was from his right side, and he got the ball out a decent distance beyond the foul line. Not like Eddie Wirt's on-the-line approach. More power, more drive.
A six-bagger in duckpins is absolutely legendary, so he was generating some real motion on the ball then. What about James Taylor?
James also pitched the ball out well beyond the foul line, similar to Chris in that regard, but his stance was more upright. You know, you see all these different variations of the two-handed style, even within the same era. It just goes to show you how adaptable and personal bowling can be. These guys, they were finding ways to maximize their potential long before it became a mainstream 10-pin phenomenon.
It's fascinating how innovation often happens independently in different forms of the sport, and then sometimes it coalesces or is discovered anew. So we've got the historical context, the duckpin pioneers, but I hear there's another incredible two-hander you've encountered, one with a style so unique it stands out even among the two-handers?
Oh, you are not ready for this one, Colleen. You think you've seen it all with two-handed bowling? Think again. There's a bowler I encountered, a female two-hander named Tara Cohen. Her style is absolutely one of a kind. I've never seen anything quite like it in duckpin, 10-pin, or anywhere else. She uses both hands, yes, but she delivers the ball by pushing it forward, almost directly from in front of her stomach.
From her stomach? That sounds incredibly unorthodox. How effective could that possibly be?
That's the kicker, Colleen. Of all the two-handed bowlers I've seen, Tara was substantially the most accurate. And not only that, her ball actually had a slight break on the alley. A slight break! With that kind of push shot delivery, it defied so much of what you'd expect. She just had this innate feel for the lane and the ball. It was truly a sight to behold. In fact, I think we've got a little clip of her in action, and honestly, seeing is believing with Tara.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. A slight break from a stomach push? I have to see this. Let's roll that clip.
All right, here we go. Video segment plays.
After the video, completely amazed, Rod, what did I just watch? I'm honestly speechless. That's incredible. You're right, it looks so unorthodox, completely different from anything I've ever associated with two-handed bowling, but she seems so incredibly comfortable and confident with it.
Right? It's mesmerizing, isn't it? Just her total command over that delivery.
Absolutely. I mean, I noticed she utilizes a full stretch and reach, and her mechanics are just so consistent. She maintains that delivery, keeping her body perfectly in line with her target until well after the ball has been released. It's like a finely tuned machine, but with such a unique engine. It's almost balletic in its precision.
Balletic is a great word for it. It has that grace despite its unusual nature. She just makes it look so effortless, yet you know the control required is immense.
It truly is, and what makes it even more astonishing is how effective this style proved to be at the highest level. I was reading up on her, and I found an article about the 2010 Ladies All-Star event, which featured the absolute best women bowlers in the sport, and guess who was referenced?
Tara, right? I had a feeling you'd dig that up. That tournament, that was something special.
Indeed. Tara Cohen went undefeated in the head-to-head finals, earning the top seeding on the tournament stepladder. Think about that for a moment, a rookie, with a totally unconventional style, just dominating the field of seasoned pros. The article, titled Two-Handed Tara, even called her a champion in every sense of the word. It was the 30th year for the Ladies All-Star Classic, held at AMF Westview in Baltimore. Over 100 of the best women bowlers in the country, and Tara, at just 23, who they said looked like a high school student, bowled with the composure of a grizzled veteran.
She certainly did. It was a masterclass in confidence and execution.
The article really highlights her distinctiveness. Most pro two-handers had adopted that shovel shot from the hip, but Tara developed her underhand shove shot from her stomach. It calls it unorthodox even for a two-handed delivery, but emphasizes her extreme accuracy. She was the Up-Ain 1 seed, going 5-0 in her division, which earned her precedence over total pins even though others had higher pinfall totals. She even clinched that 5-0 mark in the final game of match play with a pressure-packed victory over the previous year's champion, Lisa Huber.
That's the thing with Tara. She thrived under pressure. You could see it in her eyes, that unwavering focus.
And it all came down to the championship match against Jackie Adams, a formidable, experienced player known for her ladder match prowess. Jackie had just come off a tremendous 7-month run, winning a WNDA tour stop and finishing runner-up in another. So Tara, the rookie with the unusual style, was definitely seen as the underdog despite her top seeding. What was particularly interesting was Tara's decision to go first in the match, meaning she'd finish last and endure all the pressure. When asked later, she just said, "I figured I'm here. I'll either go big or go home."
Talk about confidence. That's a bold move for any bowler, let alone someone in their first major championship.
It really is. She chopped the 2-8s on her first ball, but immediately adjusted, converting the spare. And then she just elevated her game. Pinpoint accuracy, including spares in the second and third frames, and cleanups of essentially unmakeable splits, the 7-10 and the 2-3-4-6. In the fourth and fifth boxes, Jackie Adams fought hard, striking, sparing, and at the halfway mark it was dead even at 74.
Those splits, especially the 7-10 and duck pins, are just brutal. To convert those, even for 10s in a championship match, that's not just skill, that's almost an art form.
Completely agree. Tara gained an advantage with a strike in the 6th, then converted a 10-pin for a spare in the 7th, taking a 16-pin lead. Jackie battled back with a strike, closing the gap to 10 pins by the 9th. Jackie finished first with a spare and an 8 count for a 137 game. Then it was all on Tara. She needed 9 in her last frame for the championship.
The air in that house was absolutely thick. You could cut the tension with a knife, as they say.
It was. The article mentions she stood in firmly, concentrated, and delivered her most perfect ball of the match, flush in the 1-3 pocket for a strike to secure the victory. She won 148-137, and when asked about the nervousness, she admitted, "Yes, I was nervous, but I was more worried about chopping the middle. But after I let go of the ball and saw it on its way down the lane, I knew it was a good ball." That's just supreme confidence right there.
To not just win, but to close it out with a perfect strike, under that kind of pressure, that's legendary status right there. That tells you everything you need to know about her mental game, not just her physical talent. The editor's note in that article sums it up beautifully, saying her 148-137 win was the most impressive performance in a title match that this editor has ever witnessed, whether for men or women, and how her accuracy seemed to escalate with each frame rolled, culminating in that textbook strike. Just incredible.
It speaks volumes about her control and confidence, especially as the article points out, without the aid of finger holes, just pure reliance on feel and skill. It makes you wonder what else is possible when bowlers push the boundaries of conventional technique.
Exactly. Whether it's Eddie Wirt laying it on the line, Harwood and Taylor powering it down the lane, or Tara Cohen with her unique shove shot, these examples remind us that innovation isn't always about what's new, but what's effective for the individual. The two-handed bowler isn't a new idea, it's an evolving testament to human ingenuity and dedication in the sport.
What a fantastic journey through the history and evolution of this style, Rod. From the duckpin legends of old to the absolute triumph of Tara Cohen, it's clear that the spirit of two-handed bowling has always been about finding unique paths to excellence. Thank you so much for sharing these incredible stories and insights.
My pleasure, Colleen. Always happy to dive into the rich tapestry of bowling history. There's always something new to discover, even in the old ideas.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this segment. A huge thank you to Rod for joining us today, and to all of you for tuning in. Keep those balls rolling, however many hands you use. We'll catch you next time.
From the Cincinnati Enquirer in the year 1984. Little Wayne Webb Loves That Green. By Bob Rathgeber. In 1980, Larry Lichstein, the Professional Bowlers Association's Player Services Director, predicted that Wayne Webb would be the bowler of the 80s, the bowler who would succeed Earl Anthony as the sport's premier performer. When Lichstein put that statement in writing in the nationally circulated Bowler's Journal, many observers felt a bowling ball had fallen squarely on his head. But 5 PBA seasons later, Lichstein appears to be on the money. Now that Anthony has retired, no active player has won more titles or money than Webb, a little right-hander, who now calls Indianapolis home. Today, he will be one of 128 players competing in the PBA's Super Bowl Open Regional Tournament at Super Bowl in Erlanger. He bowls his first 8-game block, beginning this morning at 9 o'clock. Through the first 5 years of this decade, Webb has won 11 titles and nearly $1.5 million in prize money, including $100,110 this year. He makes it no secret that he would like to be the bowler of the decade. I started thinking about it a couple of years ago, Webb said earlier this week from his home in Indianapolis. I don't think I have met my prime by any means. I think I have a lot of good years left. And he feels a good year coming up. I'm starting to get the drive back, he explained. I got kind of burned out for a while. Then I began to realize that I have to get that want back. When I want it, I usually bowl real well. He backs that up by referring to the final 2 events on the 1984 National Tour in Columbus and Charlotte, North Carolina. I have wondered how good I would be if I had the drive of some of the other bowlers. The last 2 tournaments I finished 3rd and 6th. I wanted it. I wish I had that all the time. But it's real easy to get burned out. Webb remembers earlier in the year when he was the hottest player on the tour. He won the season's first event in Anaheim, California, then made the television finals the next 2 weeks in Alameda, California, and Las Vegas. The pressure of being in the finals 3 weeks in a row took its toll. I knew I needed to take a week off because I was getting so tired mentally, Webb explained. But I was going so good that I couldn't take the time off. The result was a slump and I got sick. While most bowlers hold both hands when they begin their approach to the foul line, Webb uses only his right. He lets the ball dangle at his side as he takes his first step and the left hand never comes into play. He went to that unique style in 1977. Back then I muscled the ball a lot, he said. A normal mistake for most bowlers is to muscle the ball in the push away. So I reasoned that if I eliminated the push away, I wouldn't muscle the ball. I tried it and got better instantly. Once in a while now I'll use 2 hands when I get into a slump. I'll try it for a little while, but I always go back. I guess that is the way I'm supposed to do it. When I went to it, I probably increased my average by 10 pins. It increased my accuracy, especially my spare game. I remember that after going to this style, I bowled 13 weeks in a summer league and averaged 239. In all, Webb has won 13 titles, still a long way away from Anthony's record 41. But he figures he has time to work on that record. I think I can win 2 a year if I have a decent year, he said. That's what I've done the last 4 years. In a good year, I think I could win 3 or 4. This is something, Anthony's record, I am striving for as a long-term goal. I certainly think I am young enough at 27 and have enough good years left. Webb is acknowledged as one of bowling's more knowledgeable players. He gets a nod in that department from Cincinnati's Steve Fair, who competes regularly against Webb on the PBA Tour. He's one of the top 5 players on the tour, said Fair. He's a good equipment changer and I've always been impressed with his knowledge of the game. That's why he's tough. And he knows he's tough. A prime example of Webb's ability to make radical changes and succeed is his fifth-place finish in this year's AC Delco tournament in Alameda, California. Because the lanes were hooking so drastically in that tournament, Webb threw his normal, wide-span fingertip grip away and drilled up a much shorter, conventional span ball. It was a move that few bowlers, even professionals, could pull off. His versatility is overwhelming, said Lichstein. He's an unbelievable grip changer. Wayne Webb will do anything to win. Webb is an overpowering player for his diminutive size, 5'6", 145 pounds. When he needs to throw a big hook, he can. When he has to play a much straighter line to the 1-3 pocket, he can make the adjustment. Webb calls himself the Green Machine. That began a few years ago when he represented the Ebonite Company, and it came out with a green, Wayne Webb signature ball. I didn't want to do anything that anyone could say anything bad about, he said. So what could you say bad about someone who wears green clothes? When I bowl, one have green somewhere in my attire. It never was a lucky color or anything before, it was just something that I adopted when they came out with my green ball. There certainly are more reasons than that for him being green. There are all those greenbacks he has been winning. From the year 2015 in the Daily Oklahoman. Guitars made with iconic Route 66 Alley's spare parts, strike chord with collectors. Seasoned by cigarette smoke, Buddy Holly on the jukebox and decades of wear and tear from bowling balls, the salvaged scraps of a once popular bowling alley are being converted into instant collector's items. 50 years after 66 Bowl opened and 5 years after it closed, the pine and maple wood that made up the lanes of the alley is finding new life as high-quality, handcrafted electric guitars. We just couldn't stand to see it get destroyed, said Cameron Eagle, a local artist who acquired the wood and is helping transform it into instruments. I just knew we could figure out something to do with it. When the bowling alley closed in 2010, people gathered in the parking lot to say goodbye to the Oklahoma landmark. They huddled for pictures in front of the historic sign of a giant bowling pin and ball encased in lights. Eagle was a regular during the bowling alley's heyday. He still remembers a packed parking lot right off of Route 66 filled with teenagers, muscle cars and hot rods revving their engines, while pretty girls and loud music spilled out from the inside. Add in the dozens of weekend rock concerts, high school dance-offs, thousands of strikes bowled and even more gutter balls and you get a sense of the sonic history of a place that was created for good, old-fashioned family fun. It was the place to be, Eagle said. We hung out there, bowled there, we basically grew up there. Eagle even took his kids to the bowling alley for their birthdays years later. When 66 Bowl decided to close in 2010, the owners also announced they would be auctioning off parts of the business, including the giant sign out front. Collectors from all over were talking about heading to Oklahoma City. Some speculated the sign might sell for as much as $1 million. Scheduled for the last week of November, the auction had to be moved to another weekend that happened to coincide with that year's Oklahoma versus Texas football game. Nobody showed up, Eagle said of the auction. The local media was there, and me and my friend were there. We ended up buying the sign for a couple $1,000s. Eagle learned another bidder bought the lanes. But the buyer, who owned a chain of bowling alleys across the country, was only interested in the laminate that had been installed in the 1990s on top of the lanes. The actual pine and maple below were left behind. The new owner, in the process of renovating, planned to junk the wood. I just made a deal with him, Eagle said. If I can remove the lanes, I can keep them. For the next 4 months, Eagle and a construction crew painstakingly removed all 24 lanes from the 66 Bowl. At 60 feet per lane, Eagle said a 15-foot section weighed about 500 pounds. While Eagle pondered what he wanted to do with the wood, his lifelong friend, Bobby Clark, said when Eagle texted him a picture of all the lanes removed from the bowling alley he only saw one thing. I just saw stacks and stacks of fenders, Clark said, referring to a well-known guitar brand. I just said to Cam, what would you think about doing some electric guitars? Clark and Eagle went to high school and played in a bluegrass band together before going their own ways after graduation. Clark moved to Nashville, playing in bands, touring the country and becoming the 2-time world mandolin world champion. It wasn't until the past 5 years that Clark decided to begin making his own guitars. It wasn't a difficult process to pick up. He had mixed and matched parts of guitars for years. He also applied an old bluegrass trick he had learned during his years on the road. Veteran musicians told stories about leaning their new instrument up against a speaker to blast it with music and break it in with vibrations. Clark tried it with his guitars, hitting them with more than 100 hours of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, and Eric Clapton. He said the sound felt alive. You pick up a new guitar, and it sounds dead, he said. These guitars sound like they've been played in 75 concerts already. They were broken in. Good mojo in them, and that's how the name of his guitar company came to be, Dr. Mojo Guitars. Once Clark got his hands on the wood from 66 Bowl, he realized the material already had that special something, and no additional treatment was needed. They had 51 years of good vibes pumped into them, Clark said. Millions of bowling balls hitting the wood, the sound of rock and roll from the jukebox and kids laughing, they already had the mojo in them. So far the two have made 10 guitars. 2 are prototypes, and the other 8 were for sale. They also enlisted the help of Oklahoma native and country music Hall of Famer Vince Gill. Clark and Eagle went to high school with Gill, and they played music together. Gill was one of the first to try out the guitar. Clark sat and watched. He loved it, Clark said. He's one to shoot you straight, too, and he really loved it. Clark said Gill wasn't only attracted to the beautiful sound of the guitar but the history it carries with it. He couldn't believe it was that same bowling alley we spent so many nights as teenagers, Clark said. When you get older, you tend to carry those memories with you. You think back on them more, and to have a piece of your childhood like that, it's special. While Clark handles the actual building and mojo-ing of the guitars, Eagle takes care of the wood preparation. Eagle delaminates the wood, cuts it to size, glues it all back together and planes it down to its final width. Of the 8 guitars the duo have made to sell, 6 already have found homes. Most have gone to avid players, but one of the first went to a major Route 66 collector. They plan on making only 20. Each sells for about $4 ooh. Earlier this month, Eagle and Clark took 3 of the guitars to the studio of Don Juntanen, a local musician and composer. Juntanen had jumped at the chance to buy the guitar when he first heard about it. Juntanen's parents had bowled in leagues at 66 Bowl, and he had spent a lot of time there growing up. For him, the guitar was more of a nostalgia piece. With 4 of the guitars lined up in his studio, Juntanen took turns playing each and discussing the differences with Clark and Eagle. This one just sings, Juntanen said as he plucked the strings of one of the instruments. It's so bright. Before playing, Juntanen had wondered whether the guitars were just going to be a showpiece. He found out otherwise. It's got the history, and having spent so much time and growing up in that bowling alley, I wanted it just for that, he said. But then I fired it up. That's not a gimmick, that's a real guitar. From the Richmond Times-Dispatch in the year 1991. Norris Jeter making most of lane change. A dependable forward who averaged 14 points for the Varina High School basketball team in 1976, Norris Jeter used to be repulsed by bowling. Concerned about maintaining his shooting touch, Jeter said, "It bothered me to put my fingers into those holes." But after Jeter took up 10 pins 4 years ago, he found that the fingertip control that sent a basketball through a basket also could put a bowling ball on track toward the pocket. Having refined his ability to rank 17th in the city's top 20 inches, Norris was in top form 8 days ago, when he opened a 755 series with his second perfect game in the Saturday Evening Recreation League at Tenpin Coliseum. Earlier this season, Jeter had notched his first 300 at Walnut Hill Lanes in the Petersburg Bowling Association. You know they say the first time is good, but the second time is sweeter. I was ecstatic and delighted, the 34-year-old right-hander said. What made the 300 at Tenpin especially satisfying was that he was foiled in a bid for a perfect game at the Southside House last season when he had to settle for a .299. It haunted me, Jeter said, because I left a stone 7-pin. I wanted to do it here. Jeter said other bowlers at Tenpin believed in him. They told me, one day, you'll get it, he said. So he said he felt no nervousness on the last shot of the 300, and extended the string of strikes 4 frames into second game before he left a 10-pin. I was very confident because I had been there before, Jeter said. He said he rolled 19 strikes in a row last season in Williamsburg, but that string did not include a 300. But in Jeter's first year on the lanes, he didn't focus on strikes. I concentrated on making spares, said Jeter, who displayed a knack for the game by averaging 186 in the 1987-88 campaign. This season, he's carrying league averages of 200 and 203 at Tenpin Coliseum, after ranking with a 206 last year. But he's posted 214 at Walnut Hill Lanes. The difference, he said, isn't lane conditions. People up here expect big games from me now, he said, but in Petersburg, it's more relaxed. Having shot 2 300s, Jeter said his remaining goals are an 800 series and the city's top ranking. I'm like the army. Be all you can be, he said. From the Evening Star in the year 1935, by Rod Thomas. Capitol finds winter sport along the Mapleways. Washington will shell out $500,000 this winter to play its favorite game, duckpins. To use another round figure presented by Arvel Ebersol, secretary of the Washington City Duckpin Association, 50,000 men, women, and children will take a turn on the Mapleways before the season is over. Washington, in proportion to population, ranks far up among the nation's cities in number of golfers, tennis players, diamond addicts and football performers, but it is probable that bowling claims more devotees here than all the other leading sports combined. The Mineralite and Maple game is a melting pot. Golfers, tennis and baseball player, gridironer, etc., also bowl. Among the 130-odd leagues listed by the Washington City Duckpin Association are groups representative of every social, professional, and economic phase of Washington. But bowling is more than a sport. It is a big business. The men who operate it continually are hard put to find a line where sport ends and business begins. Nearly $1 million is invested in drives and equipment of a score of duckpin plants within the metropolitan area. The figure is vastly larger when building values, rents, insurance, salaries, and other items are counted. The payroll is heavy, with more than $80,000 a year going to pinboys alone. J.W. Wood, president of the Metropolitan Washington Bowling Operators Association, estimates that bowling, all things considered, is a $2 million enterprise in this city. And considering that a man or woman must pay the grocer and landlord before one can afford to bowl, the figures of Ebersole and Wood are bright lights in the night of depression, for they represent a great improvement over the bowling business of the last season. One large establishment, the Columbia, now under the management of Beryl English, a year ago began a comeback after severe 1 seasons of neglect and reports an increase of 300% in intake. All Duck PLN proprietors report boosts of 25% or more. A man whose name is synonymous with success in the field of building and real estate, Morris K. Fritz, eyes with peculiar interest the 1935 bowling boom. 20 years ago he started the game toward the high place it now occupies in the recreational life of the city. A little before his time as a bowling operator the sport mainly was an adjunct of the barroom and still is, legally, due to an antiquated district law. K. Fritz himself, as a young businessman seeking a proper field, tried the liquor business and found it distasteful before that it had been, in succession, the grocery, coal and moving picture fields. Then he went for bowling. In 1913, he acquired a partnership in a small place on 8th Street Southeast. The next year found him the proprietor of the Recreation, at 918 G Street Northwest, leased on the spur of a moment by telephone, and the Palace, on E between 9th and 10th, now gone, where much of Washington's bowling history was made, where the Washington City Duckpin Association was organized a quarter-century ago, where bowling feats were performed which now are semi-mythical, where the great Harry Krause had his heyday. Then, in 1915, K. Fritz took over the Grand Central, which occupied a part of Old Center Market, which lately gave way to new government buildings. In 1920, K. Fritz and his brother-in-law Harry Carroll installed the Coliseum Drives in the Center Market building, but K. Fritz's thoughts then were drifting toward another field. A man of imagination, energy and courage, K. Fritz was the first Washingtonian to demonstrate the possibilities of bowling as a big-timers business and, in 1916, he made a singular prediction. "We're doing well," he said. "There is good money to be made in this game. But it never will be really big money until we interest the women." That, he proceeded to do. Almost every vestige of the old barroom atmosphere was wiped out under his leadership and a bowling plant before long became a safe place for a woman. Before this time a member of the shrill sex was as much of a curiosity in a bowling alley as she would have been with a foot on the rail. Tactfully, K. Fritz promoted bowling among women. Slowly they came at first, and then, with a rush, they very nearly took charge of the game. Visit a bowling plant tomorrow night and mark the percentage of women among those present. No exact figures are at hand, but Ebersole will tell you that a third of Washington's duckpin shooters wear skirts. With justifiable pride, K. Fritz observed to the writer the other day that women made the game. It isn't known generally that this same worthy pushed into being 2 great bowling plants which he never came to control. He promoted the giant Recreation in Baltimore, with its 105 drives, probably the largest bowling establishment in the world, and, with expectation of becoming a lessee, laid out the Columbia at 14th and Monroe Streets Northwest, which for a time was the top duckpin house of the city. Maya Davis, the music man, outbid him for the Columbia, known at first as the Kingpin. When Davis offered more than $26,000 in rent, K. Fritz withdrew, which proved wise, for although the Kingpin, under the crack management of J.W. Wood, did a rushing business, it never netted heavy profits. It is being operated now under a receivership, along with the Tompkins building, of which it is a part, and, without that heavy rent to pay, the Columbia next spring will show some healthy figures on the black side of the ledger. Today Morris K. Fritz has no business connection with the game he helped so greatly, but always his sentimental attachment will be strong. Never can he forget, he says, the ground floor of the recreation, from the 10 drives of which rolled more money into his till than produced by any other like number of Mapleways ever constructed. During the regular season, he says, those 10 alleys were good for $150 a day. And from them, K. Fritz reaped no small part of the financial harvest that grounded him in his present business. It was mentioned previously that bowling promoters sometimes can't discern sport from business. An interesting example is John S. Blick, who started out to become the world's foremost bowling promoter and at the same time one of the game's leading exponents. He almost succeeded in the first. In fact, he did in a way, and moved a long way toward the other goal. He became the controller of more bowling alleys than any man before him and achieved stardom as a head PLN Hawkeye, while approaching middle age. Blick now is in the middle 50s, proprietor of the largest bowling alley in the South, at Atlanta, and one of Dixie's high-ranking pin shooters. He spent the first 51 years of his life in Washington and left the old hometown with a falsely sparkling eye to say he had found a new field, down there, when his enterprises, a half-dozen of them, crashed on the rock of depression. When the economic clouds gathered, Blick was president of companies that operated bowling establishments in Washington, Richmond, Norfolk, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and Atlanta, and he was planning to extend his chain of Mapleways clear across the Southland, with the next link at Birmingham. The storm broke heavily for Blick and one after another of his enterprises were swept away until only the Atlanta plant remained. He pulled stakes here and he and his wife, son and daughter virtually began life anew in the southern metropolis. At this writing the sun is shining again for John Blick, and many a Washington bowler hopes it will brighten into the splendor of those days when Blick daringly engineered the Convention Hall project, largest single-floor bowling alley in the world, with 50 drives in row, without pillar or post to break the glistening sight, and the vast arched ceiling, with its myriad of electric lights, a spectacle in itself. Among the foremost names in the duckpin world is that of still another Washingtonian, John William Wood, who for a time battled with Blick for the distinction of being the kingpin of bowling operators. As a youngster, Wood was a concession man at Chevy Chase Lake, over which Maya Davis ruled. When Davis acquired proprietorship of the Kingpin, now the Columbia, he put Wood in charge, which was an unusual display of confidence, for the young man never before had set foot in a bowling plant, barring a dinky layout at Chevy Chase, which was an insignificant concession. Wood's first move was a singular one. He went to a rival in business to learn how to run his own. He called upon Harry Krause, manager of the famous Royal, which occupied the site where now stands the Hearst Building. But if Wood's procedure was unusual, Krause would seem remarkable, for not only did he turn over to Wood the knowledge gleaned by years of experience, but he went with Wood to the Kingpin and showed him how to put it into effect. In those days, more than a decade ago, bowling alley men as a rule guarded their secrets of keeping their drives in condition, encouraging business, acquiring goodwill, etc. But Krause was different. The Kingpin is the biggest bowling alley in Washington. It is bound to have a tremendous influence on the game, he reasoned, and it might be damaging to the business, as a whole, if it failed or were badly handled. If it is made to help the game as a whole, the Royal will gain its share of the new business. And that's exactly what happened. The coming of every new plant in pre-Depression days added to the bowling boom. The absorption point was reached with the establishment of the Arcadia by Blick and the Lucky Strike by Maya Davis, with Bill Wood, now grown to be vice president of the Davis Enterprises, at the helm of the Lucky. At one time the energetic Wood had under his wing the Lucky Strike, Kingpin. Kingpin, number 2 inches, a semi-major alley at 8th and E Streets Northwest, which gave way to another business last year, and a plant at Charlotte, North Carolina, since relinquished. At the same period, Wood managed the giant Willow Grove amusement park in Philadelphia, and the Swanee Ballroom, here, besides directing Chevy Chase Lake. For several bleak years, Washington's duckpin business withered almost into complete bankruptcy. A comeback was started last season and now the sport again is on the boom. Between the hours of 7:30 and 10 of evenings, virtually every establishment is running at capacity. Leagues that were late forming found difficulty in obtaining accommodations. Leaders in the business sport lately have begun a campaign to encourage bowling among women who spend their afternoons playing bridge and among high school students who find outdoor sports unattractive in cold weather. One major plant is permitting the youngsters to bowl in the afternoon for 10 cents a game, an innovation frowned on by many operators, who fear it may open the way for a general reduction in prices for bowling, something the game probably could not afford and still be conducted on the same high plane that now prevails. Washington is recognized as the duckpin capital of the country and for many years has set examples for other cities in the promotion and management of the sport. It is the headquarters of the National Duckpin Bowling Congress, which was organized here in 1927 with Washington men, notably, George L. Eisman, and John Blick as leading spirits. Eisman has been the secretary and mainspring of the organization, which extends from Maine to Georgia from its beginning. It is the ruling body of Duckpanism, and has accomplished much in lifting the game from the sphere of mere recreation to the status of a major sport. To be a truly top-notch bowler, nowadays a man or woman must have many of the qualifications of an honest-to-goodness athlete. And Washington is the home of many men and women who possess every needed asset to a superlative degree. Joe Harrison, the season before last, was ranked number 1 inch in the United States by the National Duckpin Bowling Congress, a spot now occupied by Nick Tronsky of Willimantic, Connecticut. Other Washington men who have been honored thusly are Ollie Pacini and Bradley Mandley. Astor Clark of Clarendon was ranked second on last season's averages and Harrison placed third, with Pacini, number 6 inches, and Ed Espy, still another Washingtonian in the select list, tied for number 8 inches, which is quite a showing for a city in competition with the entire Atlantic seaboard. But none of the capital's males ever has reigned over a duckpin realm, national or local, with the firmness exercised by Lorraine Gooley, who for 7 years held the national woman's scepter, 7 years in which she was one of America's outstanding sports figures, more dominant in her field than ever was Helen Wills Moody in tennis. Some thought that Miss Gooley never would meet an equal, but last season she encountered more than her match in the striking Norfolk blonde, Ida Simmons, buxom and graceful and game to the core, who only a week ago topped Gooley by 119 pins in a 20-game series. You will hear more about this rivalry as the season moves on, for the Washington girl is hard bent upon regaining the throne and in general averages at this time, is about even with the Norfolk maid. The struggle between the comely Miss Gooley and Simmons is the highlight of the current season. One might go on indefinitely about the outstanding figures of the past in this popular sport, but for unusual performances on the polished planks, 5 stand out in the writer's mind, yet none may have been the greatest of them all. There was Harry Krause, at one and the same time, the leading duckpin and 10-pin bowler of the city, who alternated alleys in shooting league matches, in both games, who established a world endurance record by rolling 10 pins for 24 hours without a let-up, who today shares with his old Royal teammate Harry B. Haley the distinction of being the most beloved bowler in the game's history here, of such sterling make-up that when the proprietor of the Royal, Frank Sherman, died, Krause and another Sherman standby, George Lewis, were given the billiard end of a prosperous business. Sherman's was as much a billiard as bowling establishment. There was Johnny Veith, probably Krause equal in duckpins, who came from Baltimore to be an alley manager for K. Fritz, and who, at the peak of his career as a performer, suddenly quit bowling because it interfered with his duties as an employee. And Glenn Wolstenholme, a 6-footer with long arms, who delivered the ball with a sweep that was as graceful as it was prodigious, and who never lost a challenge match. Thousands were bet on him and, oddly, he never was forced to roll a sensational score. He always managed to gather enough wood to finish in front. During one season in the All-Star District League, in which he won the championship, Wolstenholme made and missed more spares than any bowler before his time in the same number of games. One of the most interesting episodes in American bowling annals was a visit paid by John Gingler, later revealed to be a Count of Luxembourg, to Washington in 1915. Dressed in frock coat, striped pants, spats and headgear to suit, Gingler appeared one day at the palace, where were gathered the city's leading sharpshooters. "Gentlemen," the stranger said, "I will bowl anybody in the house for any stake." They looked him over and decided he was a nut. But Gingler showed his wad, declared he wasn't fooling, convinced the palace patrons that he was sane, and found takers, or rather found a take. For when Gingler left the palace he had about all the money in the place, after having beaten one after another of the capital's accomplished money bowlers. The palace cleaned out, he visited another plant, with like result, and still another, and finally, blew town, with nobody here knowing who he was, from whence he came or where he went. Some days later, capital sports writers received tidings of the Count from Baltimore, where he was wagering that he could use his cane as a cue and knock down 7 pins with one shot. Since those days we've come to know Gingler as a real sportsman, a gentleman, and a great performer in both duckpins and 10-pins, also a man with a history that might make a movie thriller. It won't be found in the record books, but the most remarkable score in the history of duckpin shooting was rolled several years ago by a high school lad named Sam Del Vecchio. Shooting at the Queen Pin on 8th Street Southeast, Del Vecchio made 8 consecutive strikes and wound up with a string of 240. A bookmaker would lay you $1 million to 1 against any specified bowler equaling that score. It never will be recognized officially as a record, however, because there was no foul line judge. The lad was so startled by his own feat, he was unable to speak coherently for several minutes afterward. From the Waukesha County Freeman in the year 1990. Time to socialize. Bowling leagues change as free time decreases. By K. Nolan. I'm not a hotshot bowler. I would love to be a better bowler, but you can go out and throw all gutter balls and have a good time. These remarks by Carol Borgwart, manager of Sunset Bowl, summarize the attraction of bowling for many. Fun, no matter what the score. Bowling, it seems, is much more than a game of skill. It provides a treasured night out and chance to socialize. I've got leagues for experts and leagues for beginners. Even the experts still come to socialize, observed Guy Stars, owner of Sussex Bowl. For a lot of people, it's their one night out, agreed Borgward. Afterward, they sit around and play cards or talk. Leagues are often organized specifically to bring people with similar interests together. There are leagues for neighborhoods, senior citizens, handicapped, scouts, college students, and children. These days, people have precious little free time. Bowling alleys have noticed that people have changed their bowling schedules. There is a decrease in the so-called Kaffee Klatsch leagues composed of women who bowled during the day, noted Michelle Schneiderman, league coordinator for Foxview Lanes. Instead, women are joining couples leagues and bowling in the evening. I have been in this business 20 years, Stars said, and I've watched bowling peak during the 1970s, and then fall off somewhat in the 1980s. I've heard that people today have 60% less leisure time than they had in the past. I see a trend toward earlier, 4 to 4:30 p.m., bowling, said Stars. People have to get up early to go to work. Also, so many baby boomers have family obligations now. The late-night bowling shifts are not as popular. Local bowling alleys have responded to the changes by offering more activities for families, children, and teens. Rock and bowl nights, held on weekends, feature live disc jockeys, popular music and dancing, in addition to bowling. The nights are geared toward middle and high school students, although managers report that lots of parents come along to join in. We have helicopter lights and mirrored balls, said Borgward. There are also pool tables and video games. Specially marked pins brings prizes, and Stars said he also promotes non-smoking among the teens and their parents. Children's birthday parties are another success for local bowling alleys. Even young children enjoy bowling with the aid of bumpers, devices which prevent gutter balls and the tears that go with them. Pizza, hot dogs, and soft drinks are served to the party goers. The social aspect of bowling is not lost on many companies, who rent lanes for a night to encourage employee camaraderie, according to Borgward. We have one league specifically for newcomers to Wisconsin, said Schneiderman. Sunset Bowl has handicapped accessible lanes for wheelchair bowlers. Again, it gets people out, gives them a chance to socialize, said Borgward. That's the nice thing about bowling, said Stars. Anybody can try it, and everyone can do it. From the year 2006 in the Newsday Nassau edition. Kulik struggling to find her game. Kelly Kulik is going through one of the most trying times of her career. What works in practice fails her when it counts most. Although she feels lost on the bowling lanes, she still has confidence in her ability. The first exempt female on the Professional Bowlers Association Tour, Kulik is competing this week in the Columbia 300 Classic at AMF Babylon Lanes in West Babylon. She struggled in her first 7-game block yesterday, placing 60th in the field of 64 with a 193 average. 3 of her first 4 games were below 200, including 128 and 169, but she battled back to average 218 in her last 3 games. I don't have any answers, said Kulik, 29, of Union, New Jersey. I was expecting much better finishes and better scores. It's been a longer road than I expected it to be. Kulik earned her spot on the tour in the PBA's Tour Trials in June after she finished 6th. The PBA had opened its membership to women in 2004, when the Professional Women's Bowlers Association folded. She was the 2001 PWBA Rookie of the Year, and won the 2003 Women's US Open. She didn't expect the competition to be easy but never expected it to be as tough as it has been on her. In her first 7 tournaments, she qualified for match play twice and has earned $12,500. Things seemed to be getting better for her at the end of November when she finished 36th in the Discover Card Windy City Classic in Vernon Hills, Illinois. She made match play the following week in the Ace Hardware Championship in Wickliffe, Ohio, where she finished 31st. But last week she placed 50th in the Beltway Classic in Baltimore. Last week I bowled good and didn't carry, Kulik said. I am working through it, trying very hard not to get discouraged. I have sought the advice of other people. To be honest, I don't know what to do. She says that her problem is in her release and adjusting to the conditions on the lanes. And while she continues to battle through it, she still has confidence that she can succeed on the PBA Tour. To make it to this point is difficult, she said. I believe I can win out here. I know I could do it. I have to keep it as simple as I can. There's a solution, and she's going to keep trying to find it. From the Tulsa Tribune in the year 1960. Bowling curve tip. The curve is a slower delivery than the hook and rolls more. It covers more alley than the hook because of its wide arc, and it must be thrown from a stance closer to the center than the hook. Those who throw what is called a large curve should be anywhere in line with the lead pin, or maybe even slightly to the left of that pin. From the year 1943 in the Casper Star Tribune. Airbase Bowling Alley is nearing completion. A final step toward the opening of a bowling alley on the base was taken recently when workmen began laying the alleys and installing equipment, Special Services announced. Lieutenant Bernard Cohan, Assistant Special Services Officer, announced this week that the alleys were expected to be ready for use soon after the first of the year. 6 national ABC regulation bowling alleys have been purchased and are being installed at an approximate cost of $8,000. The bowling alley will be located in a new building in the rear of the Little Post Exchange. Included in the equipment for the bowling alley are 30 balls, 30 sets of pins, 3,000 sore sheets, lights, bed and gutter brush, 3 ball returns with hydro check ball stops, 6 score tables, and a quantity of cleaner and polisher for the alleys. The bowling alley will be open to military personnel only and the charge will be 15 cents per line. Soldiers will be engaged as pin boys and will earn 5 cents per line. Several bowling leagues will be organized as soon as the alleys are completed, it was announced. From the year 2004 in the Times. Great Balls of Fire. Hammond resident hopes ball warming towel catches on. For as long as people have driven straight from a day shift at work to a bowling league at night, the reality of cold bowling balls in the trunks of cars has been commonplace. For 35 years, Perez has pondered a remedy for this. His motivation increased when bowling centers began to change lane surfaces from wood to synthetic, wreaking havoc on bowlers not able to keep bowling balls at room temperature. So Perez created a ball warming towel and spent $10,000 of his own money for the patent. He has taken his idea to Invent Tech of Coral Gables, Florida, which represents individual inventors who have an idea but lack the resources, experience, or market connections needed to turn that idea into a profitable product. While it might take a couple of years, or longer, for the product to be purchased and distributed, Perez believes his idea will impact the masses. Because of contractual obligations, Perez isn't allowed to talk about how the towel works. There are millions of bowlers in North America, Canada, and beyond, and I'm looking for this to be sold and used worldwide, Perez said. I'd love to see about 250,000 to 500,000 sales in the first year. I knew that it would take some time for a manufacturer to purchase the product, but I know that bowlers would want to purchase this. Perez, who has been bowling in leagues for more than 40 years, said it takes a long time for a cold bowling ball to warm up enough to be effective on today's synthetic lanes. It usually takes a game and a half for a bowling ball to warm up, and even longer in sub-zero weather, Perez said. A cold bowling ball will just slide down the lane and will not be able to track through the oil. This ball warming towel will effectively combat that problem. Perez said he appreciated the idea all the more when he recently switched lockers with his old friend, Hall of Famer Joe Trombetta, exchanging a spot at eye level for one on the floor. I switched with Joe because he always had to bend down all the time to get his ball, but the trade-off is that I now have a cold bowling ball, Perez said. I'm just waiting for a company like Brunswick to follow through by signing the disclaimer forms that they can view my product and eventually purchase it.
Well, I guess we've come to the end and we'll be wrapping it up for today. Thanks for stopping by and tuning in. As usual, if you haven't already done so and would like to be notified when future videos become available and are published, feel free to hit the subscribe button in the lower right corner of the videos or YouTube video screen. Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the upcoming Thursday or Friday. Take care.